Hello, Abigail here with the astrology for this week. This week is one of those big time weeks that we're going to see in 2025. We had several of those in the earlier part of this year with Neptune's ingress into Aries, the eclipses, the retrogrades, and we've had a bit of a respite and now we're back in it. So this week we have the Saturn ingress into Aries, which is big stuff. Yes, the Saturn transit is shorter than the Neptune transit, but Saturn is well, it is the ruler of time. And it is the ruler of difficult things and boundaries and barriers and restrictions. Um, Saturn is also a great teacher, but the lessons of Saturn are rarely fun or deeply enjoyable. They're more of the look back and be like, wow, if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't be the person I am today. So we have this ingress. Just to remind you, we will have it retrograding back at the 1st of September. It'll be in Pisces until 2026. So this is not the last one and done, but this is the beginning of the end for that cycle and the beginning of the Saturn and Aries cycle. If you are a Saturn in Aries, this is your Saturn return to start. So this is a big deal for you. If you are Saturn in Pisces, it is the end of this little Saturn moment for you. So exciting times. And if you have a Saturn in any of the sextile signs, so Aquarius or Gemini, this is kind of a kickoff moment for those of us who have it in Aquarius, like me. This is kind of the real understanding of that cycle kicks in now. And if you have the Gemini one, this is kind of the beginning of you moving towards that Saturn return, especially since, that nodal opposition is a thing right before your Saturn return. So it's really important. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Know that this is big stuff. Know that the winds are changing. You may not notice it at first since this is the ingress. But with Saturn going into Aries, I don't think it's as insidious as Saturn in Pisces. So yeah, let's get into this week and its rundown. But I really wanted to kind of highlight how big this week is. And I want to be clear, it's not a time to stress or worry, but it's a time to lock in with awareness and to, listen to the messages the universe is giving you and start paying attention to your cycles and the things that are happening so that you can participate in the energy rather than kind of being, stuck in the kickback all the time. On Tuesday, the 20th, we enter Gemini season. Happy birthday, my Gemini sons. This is a really vibrant, wild season that I really appreciate. It's time to kick back and be a bit free. Yeah, there are some pretty serious things happening. I think a lot of this Gemini season, and you can watch the taroscopes that I do for each sign. They're a tarot astrology reading for each sign for each season that we go through. So I think the one important thing is that every planet that enters into Gemini, including the sun, is going into a trine with Pluto. So while Gemini season is this beautiful dynamic, um, wild thing, it is being kind of drawn into this deep, dark Plutonian place. And it's not dark as in like spooky, scary, but as in like we don't know what's happening. As in, when we do know what's happening, it's seeing things come to light that have been hidden for a long time and recognizing where people's, especially in Gemini, where people's language and words match up to their actions. So it is still fun. It is still silly, goofy, but the beginning of the season is going to feel a bit different due to that trine with Pluto. And for the next, until 2043, every Gemini season will have a trine with Pluto. So let that lock in. And all of your Gemini placements are getting activated if you have any. And if you don't, that house is getting activated. So this is the beginning of that. This is the beginning of this kind of permanence of Pluto in Aquarius and how that affects the air signs. It's obviously affecting earth signs as well, but we're talking about Gemini season. So we're heading in Gemini season. There's a lot of stuff that happens. I'll do another video on kind of an overview for those people who don't want to watch my Taroscope video or who just want more of this. And then on Thursday, we get Venus trine Mars. And this is really beautiful, important because both Venus and Mars are now officially out of their post-retrograde shadow. We are finally getting in retrograde free planetary interaction in fire signs, in a trine. This is bombastic, flowing energy. This is the energy that gets stuff done. This is the energy that starts and ends relationships. but not from a place of like being forced or kind of like the chaos of retrogrades where people just fall off and you're like, how would happen to this relationship? This is the energy of you being able to do what you want in your relationships if you are aware of what's going on. So it is the time to activate yourself in your relationships, in your desires, to see the people who are there to support you, for the people who are there for the ride. And not everyone has to be on the same pace as you in relationships. Some people are supports. Some people are the people who don't change, like they're not stuck in toxic habits, but who are more consistent, who we can come back to. And then they're the people who are right up front with us, screaming on the roller coaster of life. Um, and all of those things are functional, and they're the people that we never see and then we meet up with every 10 years and have a great time. Um, but this is that moment to really recognize what relationships are what, and then going forward with what we desire and what we need in that moment. This is also a great trine for activation and activism. If you care about something and you have, you're kind of maybe stepping your way into being more open or more public about it, or there's someone you're working up to having a conversation about, this is a great time to do that or to plan it. Um, you know, Venus in Aries is, if anything, honest upfront. Maybe a bit harsh because of it, but hopefully not intentionally. I think you can be honest and not harsh. Um, as a Venus in Aries, I think you can kindly tell people to, let's say, to F off. You can kindly tell people where things aren't working and still be honest and true to yourself. Then on Saturday, this is a humdinger of a day. I will say that. It's a lot for a day. We have the Sun trine Pluto. So there is that, you know, Sun Pluto trine moment. And in this moment, a lot of people's intentions and a lot of who someone truly is. When we have the Mercury trine or a Mercury square, it's very much stuff that's kind of intentionally buried, things that people don't want us to know about. But with the Sun and Pluto, it's not the stuff that's intentionally hidden, it's the stuff that gets missed. And when we have a Sun trine, then it's like, oh, that's how it's always been. And it's not something sneaky or deceptive per se. It's just like we've been distracted. And yeah, some people who are messing around are definitely hiding stuff. But for me, it is just the honesty and the truth of a person. And the truth of a person isn't always nice, is on display, and who they really are and their real intentions. And you can choose to believe them or not believe them. I believe that you should believe who people say they are and how they act. Um, so this is just a bombastic day. I do wonder if we're not going to get some bombshell news. I don't normally do mundane astrology, but I do wonder because we also have Mercury conjunct Uranus. It feels as though something's coming down around this time. Not sure what it is. It also, because Pluto's involved, it also might be something that we're like, I thought that would be more important, and no one pays attention. And then a couple months later, it is the kind of straw that gets pulled that knocks everything down. And in your own life, this is people really doing what they say they do. If you have someone who you need something done with or who was committed to something with you, this is kind of that time where you're going to understand if they are actually capable of following through on the stuff that they have committed to. Or even you, if you don't know if you're able to commit to something, this Saturday is a day that is really going to highlight and tell you what they are capable of and what they can and cannot do. And then we have the Saturn ingress into Aries. So Saturday is just one major impact after the other. And I, you can believe the universe works in whatever way you choose, but it's one of those days where I'm like, this feels intentional. This feels like we're poking at things that are corrupt and very volatile and not stable. I think it's also one of those moments, for better or for worse, and this is not to fearmonger, but to kind of just say how things are. I think this is one of those moments that is going to kick off something that is going to push to a point of fracture somewhere in the world. I think there's many places where this can happen. But in these moments, what is important is to be true to yourself, is to be true to your beliefs, is to push when you feel that give of the system, when the system is tottering on its little tootsies. Saturn's ingress into Aries, I think, is going to bring a lot of spiritual release. However, when we hit a point of release, we often hit a point of pushback. So anyone who is not ready to engage in the freedom of other people's thought and belief and mind, they are going to push back against belief, especially with that Neptune in Aries conjunction. That's a huge, it's going to be a big moment for all of us when it comes, if you do anything spiritual. It's just one of those, it's where belief and dreams and kind of the unknown reality of things comes up right against Saturn. Um, and yeah, it's a big deal. It doesn't happen until February 20th of next year, so we have a bit of time. But this is that precursor. This is that kind of entering into that relationship to Neptune that is coloring the entirety of this Saturn transit. It's more than just Saturn. It is about what you believe in, what you dream of, what you are capable of imagination wise. It's also a moment where you're going to see a lot of people's imaginations shrink really small, and they're only going to believe in what is immediately present and what is being whispered in their ear. And so it's a time to fight to expand, to fight to resist this kind of closing wall, feeling like the walls are closing in, that I think is prevalent for a lot of us who work in spirituality. I'm not saying that like our spiritual lives are getting cramped, but the zeitgeist, the energy of the collective, um, is super tight because we're getting oppressed. We've always been oppressed, but the oppression is ramping up because for like a few seconds we got a taste of what it could be like if people were actually free. Um, especially in like 2020, when like obviously the restrictions and the masks, and I still mask because I'm disabled and also I respect my community as well. Um, but when we had things like the Black Lives Matter movement, and even before that, we had the gosh, I can't remember the name. Now I'm blanking. Something Wall Street. Movement pushing against capitalism, pushing against racism, and all of these things are interconnected. We have people fighting, disabled people in Congress fighting and being dragged out by cops fighting for their rights. And we've seen this before with the Capitol Hill crawl, with the fact that there's been such a huge need to fight for disability rights, not just in the US, but all over the world. So in this moment with Saturn and Neptune, it is time to push back against those things, because we can look at it from one perspective, which is how some people are going to engage with this energy, which is we need to make ourselves smaller to fit into the Saturnian box within the Neptunian constructs. But what I really think, if you're actually functioning and you actually understand Saturn, what Saturn is asking you to do is to push those boundaries. Saturn has boundaries in order for us to find our limits. And sometimes those limits are very small and sometimes those limits are really big. And if we don't push them, then we'll never know. And that's what Saturn plays with. It plays with restriction and release and capacity. And I think Saturn is encouraging us to be like, you actually have more capacity than you thought. And Neptune is going to help us find that capacity. And I don't think that Neptune and Saturn are opposing each other in this. They want to work things out. They want to, and this is obviously in kind of a, I am definitely personifying them. But my personal belief, because I do work with them as ideas and archetypes, is that this is a desire for us to do that, to expand those parameters, to combine both the idea of boundaries and the idea of limitlessness, and to find a way to kind of traverse through that. This is also an opportunity to have shifting and malleable boundaries that work really well with the people that you set them with. And yeah, and some people you're going to set those malleable boundaries and they will bulldoze them. And that's fine. You can set up really firm ones then. But don't see this just as, Saturn coming in and being like, no, you can't have these things. Especially as Jupiter is going to be entering into Cancer very soon, and we're going to end up with a square. Don't think of it just as that. Think of it beyond just Saturn punishing you. Saturn is not God or Jesus or whatever we've been taught that like higher beings are. Saturn is here for lessons, not for punishment. So don't forget that. And then on Sunday, moving on from my my impassioned speech, Mercury goes into Gemini, and we don't get it there for very long. It goes into Cancer quite soon. When Mercury is not retrograding, it's only a couple of weeks that it transits a sign. But it is a beautiful time for domicile things. We're going to have Venus, not quite yet, but eventually entering into Taurus, where it's also domicile. We'll only get 2 days of a domicile Mercury and a domicile Venus, but it'll be nice to get these planets in places that they're very happy. Mercury and Gemini is a time to explore new thoughts, to play with things that we haven't played with before, to toy with our appearance, and to explore what we want to be and our ability to be whatever we feel like. As someone who is very fixed sign heavy, I do always like coming home, but I do have a midheaven and a south node in Gemini. So I value and appreciate that ability to be flexible almost, almost to an extreme. Sometimes I'm too flexible. But yeah, it's Mercury and Gemini is a beautiful time for speech. It's a beautiful time for communication and language. And I change the way that I interact, especially in virtual spaces, actually. Um, when these things happen, when Mercury is in Taurus, I'm really careful with who I engage with, how I engage with, when I block them, when they get unhinged and harmful, where I limit myself in communication. And when it goes into Gemini, then I switch into like, not devil's advocate, because I never believe in that, but as in like, maybe being a little more insulting, poking the bear a little bit more, toying with toying with language, being a little more clever. So yeah, I encourage you to do that when you watch Mercury transits. This might just be a me thing. I'm a Mercury ruled person, so I like to play with what Mercury does, and when it's in a different sign, I like to do different things. But that is that week. It's intense. It's a lot. That Saturday is especially big. And we're also going to feel a pull because there's a new moon on the Monday after this week as well. So the minute we hit this week, we hit entrance into Gemini, Venus, Mars trine, that massive Saturday. And then, and then we go into this Gemini new moon that has Pluto trine, Saturn, Neptune sextile, a conjunction with Mercury. It's really big. I'll do a video on that too. But that is the energy and the vibe for this week. It's nothing to be scared of, but it's something to be aware of. And to just know that this is a really big turning point in the year. All right, my loves, please comment, like, enjoy this, subscribe if you enjoy my stuff. Yeah, and I will see you in a different space and time.